interactive. So we asking questions. We'd love for you guys either to give a sign or I put in everyone's camera so I can see you guys give a sign or thumbs up or things of a kind, so I can be able to. Uh, is an interactive presentation as we go. That way we can go through the whole presentation. So today we're going to be talking about brotherly love. I mean, every single presentation has a goal and has an intention. So the first one of the goal of this presentation, it's a Masonic education presentation, but also it has a goal because as Freemasons, we are learning lessons from our catechisms and our degrees to better ourselves and to grow. So the purpose of this presentation is to remind us of the basics. Sometimes there's one of my favorite sayings. It's whenever we are not able to change a situation. So when you cannot change something, well, not everybody loves everybody, right? So sometimes you have to start within yourself, right? So when you are not able to change a situation where we are challenged to change ourselves, and that's what we call organic growth. And as you know, a lot of lessons within Freemasonry teach us organic growth and how we grow within ourselves. So, brotherly love, a tenet that we have learned. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys have been in Masonry for many years, and the brotherly tenet has been, I learned it as a tenet, but I don't remember when. The tenet, how we learned it, and some of you guys may have got an older version, that red book on the left, but it's the Enter the Apprentice, where the brotherly love was taught. And during that, in that booklet, when he talks about it, Freemasonry considers brotherly love, relief, and truth to be teaching fitting the pattern outlined for tenets. They are so true that no one can question them. So we do not question Freemasonry, and nobody can question the brotherly love, the relief, and the truth. They're obvious, self-provided, and axiomatic. Perhaps there are many that considers brotherly love to be highly desirable and yet idealistic to the extent they cannot be attained. And this is like things I learned a word I took directly from that booklet that we receive every time we get initiated. Freemasonry challenge this idea and places brotherly love first among those virtues which are obtainable and obviously true. And lastly, what it says is, unless you grasp this and see that the teachings of our order are self-evident realities and not visionary ideas, you will never understand the Masonic teachings. So the brotherly love is not a myth; it's actually realities that the Masonic teachings are trying to teach and try to reach. And there are histories, and we can discuss about them here during this presentation. And we're gonna use a faith to see how they apply, right? Freemasons does not tell us that brotherly love, relief, and truth ought to be true, and that if you would be better for us if they were true. It tells us that it is true. They do exist. It's part of our teachings. So the question is, well, we are Freemasons. We are Master Masons. We've been around for a long time. Why are we talking about this as a bit about the brotherly love as a tenet, which is an Enter the Apprentice? I mean, we've been a Freemason for 30 plus years and so forth, but sometimes those tenets, we need to go back to them because they are the foundations, and I will build my story and the whole presentation through that, and you will see at the end. So the first thing that we thought, and by the way, is everybody here a Master Mason? No Enter the Apprentices or everybody? Okay. I don't want to ruin anything for non-Master Masons. So as Master Masons, what we learn, the ineffable name of God, right, is missing. So we know that is what? It's missing. So it's missing. It's not there. We're still searching for it. And if you also get into royal art or get into the other rites, you will learn more about the stories there. So now, I mean, this is an esoteric conversation. Let's get esoteric about this presentation. Before we do so, I do ask, this is one of my favorite sayings, as Brother Ron has mentioned, I personally have studied so many religions myself. I Sufis practiced, I did, I still practice after this presentation. I'm gonna join my Sufist order to do the Sufist order, which is prayers and so forth. I did Kabbalah studies because I believe Aristotle. This idea says if it's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it, and we as Masons, we learn from the lessons within our degrees. We do not. Some of this is different than our beliefs, but the lessons from them, that's what we pursue. I mean, if you go to the Scottish Rite, the encyclopedia of Masonry, there's so many to learn there, but the lessons that we're learning from and the vision within those lessons. So I hope everybody entertain the thought, even though sometimes we'll be against some other people's beliefs, but just entertain the thought to see where we're going with it at the end of the presentation, please. So with that being said, let's talk about our favorite person in Masonry, our brother Harim Abiff. So what we know about Harim Abiff, we know two things. He was the scribe of King Solomon, okay, and knew the ineffable name of God. Knew part of it, knew the third of it. He knew the ineffable name of God. So our brother Harim Abiff has two distinguished priorities as a human that he was a human. So, do we know anything else? I have a question here. How many think, and you can just raise your hands, and I have this right here in front of me. How many of you think Harim Abiff is a fictional story? Is a fictional person? Okay. I mean, please, I know a lot of brothers that do, so don't be shy if you do so. Okay. I cannot see everybody, but okay. So if you do, okay, great. So I want to talk about a figure in Islamic teaching that is specified in the Quran. His name is Asif bin Barkhia. Asif bin Barkhia. This person is, there's only one story about this person in the whole Quran. The whole Quran is 604 pages, 140 chapters, 6,236 verses, and hundreds of stories about so many prophets and messengers and non-prophets and good people in the history, but only few verses about this person, and only one story about this person, and all that talks about this man and his power. And he's a man, and he's not a prophet. He's not a chosen person by God. He's not a messenger. He's just a man, but he's powerful. What we knew about him, one thing, the scribe of King Solomon. He was the scribe of the King Solomon. What the second thing we know about him is he knew the ineffable name of God. Okay, so as you can see what I'm going there, and hopefully that by the end of the presentation, I will connect the dots. But before we do so, how many of you guys have heard of the jinn, please? Awesome. Great. Awesome. So if you have not, that's not a problem. I'm gonna explain to you who the jinn is. Now we can walk through it, and it's this. So the jinn, because to understand the story I'm gonna talk about Asif bin Barkhia, you have to understand who are the jinn and their power of the jinn. So let's talk about Asif the jinn themselves. So the jinn, they are in the Islamic teaching, and keep in mind, I'm doing this based on the Islamic teachings, right? So the jinn are made of from fire, human made from dirt, angels made from light. That's how it's described for us in the Quran. The jinn, they live in all dimensions. Yes, we say all dimensions. There are 4 dimensions that we live in, correct? Which is, if you look at the height, the widths, the X, Y, Z's, and then the time. I'm talking from a dimensional perspective. But from our perspective as humans, the dimension we live in is perpetual. We just live in. We cannot go back. The jinn can go back. They live in dimensions. Matter of fact, they live in dimensions we don't even know yet, and science has not proven to us yet. So we're still trying to define what are these dimensions. The Quran talks about them living in every single dimension. So did the Prophet. So they live in several dimensions. They can take possessions of any. So as over here, we talked about him. Let's talk about the jinn. As you can see, The jinns made from fire. We talked about that. Next thing is they all live in dimensions. So they are living different dimensions. They can possess, they have the ability to possess things. And what I mean by possess things is they have the ability to possess humans, and we have heard about exorcisms, possess other things such as animals and so forth. They have the ability to take a shape of any item. A jinn can take a shape of a rock, can take a shape of anything. The jinn, they live in earth. They lived in earth before humans. I want to explain this concept of earth. For us Muslim, and this is a very discussed within the Muslim, we call them ulama, which are the people that know, that explain. Because in Islam, there is no relationship between you and God except you and God. Even the Imam is just a person that explains to you, that does deep understanding, esoteric understanding of the Quran, and try to explain it to you, because it's in Arabic, it has a lot of meaning, it has stories in different places. So somebody that has a deep knowledge. The earth is it some knowledgeable people, some Muslim scholars, that's the word we're looking for, scholars. The earth is not only our earth. We believe the earth, to explain the earth, is everything in our galaxy, because in the Quran it says that there are seven skies in the earth, which we have defined later on by science. There are the seven skies of the atmosphere, the ozone, seven skies. And then of such, God has created seven skies above the galaxy, the whole earth. So the earth itself, above it, there are seven skies. So they lived in earth, and earth includes Pluto, includes all of the others, includes our earth before humans. They inhabited that before it, for us. Lucifer, we all know Lucifer became Satan. Before Satan was Lucifer when he came down. Before then, Lucifer was one of the most loved jinn by God, that he raised him to him. And we know the story between Lucifer and Adam. That is the same story, almost between all of the Abrahamic religions. The jinn has the power to try to listen to the angels' planning. As Muslim, we believe angels plan, the destiny. God has a destiny for human, but the angels plans. So they try to listen to them, and then the angels strike them down every single time. Only two prophets in the Quran that talks about the prophets that had taught the jinn are Moses and Muhammad, peace be upon them. I will talk actually how they are called in the Torah or in Judaism. They have a name for them. I'm going to refer to it here shortly. But there are only two prophets that have talked about them. And Moses, if you Judaism, they call them shads. Some rabbis don't believe in the existence of shads. Shads it's Judaism. Many Asian rabbis deny their existence. A lot of others, they do. Jinns are used in black magic. They put curses on people. There's a very famous book that we don't know where it's at. It's the whole book. It's called Shams Ma'arif, the son of the knowledge, where it talks about, which is one of the scholars, actually was a Sufi guy, scholar Bunni, that he wrote it, and he talks about everything can do with the jinn and how many of them and so forth. So we learned some stuff that they are the believers of them, that the believers, even the jinn has the believers and the non-believers. The believers that they follow God and obey God, the non-believers that they're the devils. And we believe that the believers of them, they protect what we call the pure blood. I mean, if you are a Don Brown fan, you heard about the pure blood. As Muslims, we do believe in the pure blood. There are a lot of pure blood because they're descendants of the Prophet, many people out there. And the jinns, they're the protectors. Some people say the jinns protect the pure blood. There are 7 jinn kings, and this is what I want to get to now that we understand what the jinns. But on earth, there are 7 jinn kings. 4 of the jinn kings qualifies are archvillains or leaders of the infernal hosts. Each of the four archdemons have a deputy called an ifrit, which is an evil jinn. So they are the evil, they are the devils that walk around us, that are four of them, four of the sevens. Every single, the northeast, east, and west has a jinn. And a lot of powers, the energies, they're energies. A lot of people, if you are into Reiki, or you are into energies and so forth, you understand the energy, the shapings of the energy. Jinns are our energies because their power is beyond human powers, right? They're very strong. They can take shapes of anything. They can move objects, mountains. They are very powerful people, creatures, more powerful humans, more powerful than humans. But God has created us as the most beautiful in the Islamic teachings, and every single teaching, as the most beautiful creator. It was the humans. So let's talk a little bit about the Islam. So now we talked about the jinns, which is an idea. I want to talk about the Islam. And by the way, I chose here some Masonic words that we use as Masons, but actually they do relate to also to the Islamic. In Islam, we do have 3 degrees, as we do have as Freemasons, believe it or not. And actually, they're called 3 degrees. They are called 3 degrees. I'm not making that up. They're called 3 degrees. The first degree is Islam. I use the word initiation, but it is the initiation of when you become a Muslim by stating your profession of the Islam faith, that there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. Like, that's the first step in Islam. The second step, with the second degree, when you get to the next second degree, to got away from it, and it's when you're past the passive Muslim to the next degree of belief, where his heart is cleansed and full of love. This is the Iman. It's called the Iman, which is faith, which heart is full of faith and love. And I'll talk about why faith and love are so intertwined in the Islamic teachings, because his heart is cleansed and full of love. This stage is the root. They call it the root of the Islamic belief. Anybody can be Muslim. It can be Muslim in Islam, but not everybody can have faith. It takes a lot of work on ourselves to have faith. And the last one is when you are raised to the sublime degree, literally, of wisdom and knowledge, is called ihsan, which is, it can translate to excellence, wisdom, rightness. A word in Arabic can translate to 6,000 words in English, and so in Arabic itself. Ihsan, which means like wisdom, which is like believing that you're such in the proficiency of your belief and your actions. It's like you're having interactions with God. It's like you're talking to God. Literally, it's one of the highest you can get. Not everybody get that privilege. Your heart has to be super cleansed, and we're gonna talk about heart cleansing here in shortly. So let me talk about King Solomon kingdom in Islamic teachings. So King Solomon, there's a story about King Solomon itself in the Islamic teaching that talk about the king itself, and talk about how what God gave him. He was the king of the humans. He was the king of the animals. King Solomon in the Islamic teaching, he gathered animals and talked to animals. He could hear like ants talking and so forth. He has asked, in the Quran, it states that King Solomon has asked God for a kingdom no man ever had or will have before, and God gave it to him. So he can talk. He was the king of the animals, king of the humans, and king of the kings of the jinn. He controlled the jinn, right? He controlled them. And as Muslims, we believe that the jinns, not only humans were building the King Solomon temples, the jinn also would help him build the King Solomon temple. King Solomon temple is, if you don't know, right now it's called from Islamic belief, it's called the Aqsa Mosque. But before then, it was the King Solomon temple. It was the first direction we prayed toward before we start praying toward Mecca. It was our first prayer direction, like we used to face when we used to pray before the Muslims took came back and cleansed Mecca and took all of the stones and the gods, the stone gods from inside. Then we could face Mecca. So King Solomon, it's a holy temple for the Muslims as well. King Solomon's temple. And the last thing is King Solomon controlled the winds and others. God gave him a ring. A lot of people says that ring was magical, but don't we all call unreal things to humans being magical? I mean, anything that's you have, and we're talking about the King Solomon's ring. By the way, you guys can see my presentation, correct?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, perfect. So we had a ring that will be able to control things that are uncontrollable. We talk about wind. We're talking about jinns. We talk about things that as humans we can't. So now that we got King Solomon, we got Asif Barkhia, we got the jinn. Let's talk about this story. And I remember what I told about Asif Barkhia. In the whole Quran, there's one verse, like one, two, three, like six verses that talks about him, as you can see, from 38 to 42, 4 verses, 4, 5, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses that talks about Asif Barkhia's story. So the story goes like this, and you don't have to read it. I can tell you what it says. I'm going to go through it. The story is following. King Solomon used to do gatherings of humans, gatherings of this. He did a gathering of the animals, and all the animals came in except a bird that did not show up to this bird that did not show up in it's called the hudhud, and it's the hopo bird. It's like a woodpecker bird that he did not show up to the meeting. And when the woodpecker did not show up, they asked him, "What is he? What is this woodpecker? Where did he not show up?" This is a hopo. It's the translation to English from hudhud. It's Hoopoe. So I'm sorry if my accent sometimes fail me, but it's hopo. That's why I am. So the bird did not show up. So King Solomon was like, "What is he?" So when King show up, he's like, "Oh God, oh King Solomon, I found a lady in Yemen," and what we call Yemen now. Back then it's called Sheba, Balqis. It was in the region, the south. Sheba. She was worshiping things that are not God. She's not worshiping God. And he was like, "Oh, my goodness. All right." So he wrote the messenger. He sent her a letter. She went to the letter messenger, and he was like, "Make her worship God." Right? She was like, "Who's this King Solomon?" She heard about his empire and how powerful he is and his army. She sent him a lot of money and like a lot of money and jewelries and gold and to bribe him. When the messenger came back with all of that, he was like, no money for God. She needs to worship God, or I'm going to come with my army and we're going to force her to worship God. So he sent her all that money back. So here she is. She wants to come to the king to come back. So now he's sitting with the jinns that are more powerful, with his scribe, Asif Barkhia, and everybody, and said, "Who can bring me, what's the biggest thing she has?" And she had her throne, which is where she sat. The throne that she sat is like an arc throne where she sat. It's very big, made of gold and huge and heavy and big. And he said, "Who can bring it to me?" The jinn king jumped in, and he goes like, "I will bring it to you, the king of jinn. I'll bring it to you. I'll bring it to you, sir, before you finish the blink of the eye." Great. Then Asif Barkhia jumped in, human. He said, "I will bring it to you, sir, before you finish half of a blink of the eye." And he made it happen. So the story here in the Quran teaches us that Asif Barkhia, who was a human that knew the ineffable name of a God, he was able with that word to do things that are beyond the measure of anything else that the most powerful creatures we have on earth cannot do. And that's how powerful is the ineffable name of God. It can move a throne, how big it is. And the story behind this would show us how powerful is that name. It's not just a name. In Islam, we do believe in ineffable name of God. It's about 37, 38 words. It's that there are stories about Prophet talk about some people he have heard them prayed with it. It's not a myth in the Islamic belief. It's something that we do believe it does exist. Okay, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here shortly. So, sorry if I make your head hurt a little bit talking about like a non-prophet human. By the way, we believe as Muslims all prophet knew the ineffable name of God, because they have that connection directly. They have that talk about it. That's wisdom, that direct connection with God. So they all knew it, but like we believe that they all knew it, because if all prophet knew it, I'm sure all the prophet knew it. But a non-prophet human in possession of the ineffable name of God. So if you remember this guy we talked about, Asad Makhaya, that said the story, he was a scribe of Solomon, knew the ineffable name of God, but also was a faithful believer. He had that faith. He received that second degree of the Islamic belief of faith, and he professes it. Our prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad, said, no one will have faith till he loves for his brother. I mean, you cannot have that full stage of faith until you love for your brother what he loves for himself. I mean, that's how powerful it is. I mean, think about it. The first person you ever, I mean, brother here, it's general, brothers. I mean, it's general in Islam, when the word like brother, that can be a brother or sister, sister loves a sister, or brother loves a sister. Think about this. Growing up, you had a close sibling next to you. You always competing with them. You always want to have something they don't have. It's a human nature. That's us. Our heart always want to be that. You want to have that thing, right? You cannot say, "Oh, my brother." You always complain to your parents, "Why my brother had that thing?" I mean, some of us like literally have very that clients have, but some of us do have that competition. So our prophet does state that love, that love in the heart, that cleansed heart, is what gets you to that believer. And the story of the Asif ibn Barkhiyah states that you cannot achieve that ineffable name of God unless you have that true believer heart. Because, and I'm going to talk about here explanation why they have taught us that way. So before I go down, I want to talk about a little bit about the heart. The heart. There are stories about the heart purification, even with our prophet, Muhammad, peace upon him, who was chosen by God. So there are a few stories. He was with his wet nurses. So Arabs, very common back in the era, even though they had moms, they used to send them to wet nurses in Bawadi, in the countryside, to get wet nurses. So he was playing with the wet nurses behind the house when two angels, Gabriel and Michael, came in front of the two men wearing white clothing and laid down the prophet, Muhammad, and opened his chest. A black blood clot was taken out of his heart. That clot, it's believed to be the place that the devil usually uses to affect people's heart. This was done in order to highlight that there is no spot within the prophet subject to being affected by the devil. I mean, it was not, but he got affected. There's some stories about that he still got affected, even though he was purely cleansed before he was washed his heart with the snow water. Another time we know that his heart got affected. Gabriel, before he gave him the message, he cleansed his heart. Mind you, we're talking about heart. The first thing he did to him is cleansed his heart. Then he gave him the revelation, because it's the heart, the brother, that love. The heart function is the love. The last thing is, as Muslim, we believe in a night journey where our prophet went from Mecca to Jerusalem, and then he ascended to God. He did not meet God. Only as Muslim, we don't believe he talked to God, but he ascended to him. And I don't get too detailed to that because there's some, but he ascended to God. That night, before he took off, Gabriel split his chest open and washed his heart with Zemzem, water. Zemzem is the water. If you remember the story between um, when Prophet Ibrahim sent he took Sahar and Ishmael to the desert where Mecca is right now, and she was running for water, and Gabriel came and struck down. That's the story we have. Struck down and water came out. That's the water Zemzem that we still have until today. So that water Zemzem, he cleanses his heart. So what I'm saying is, even as Muslim, we believe the perfection of heart is what is needed before you can get any wisdom, even message from God. The first thing that happens is the perfection of God. So God will not give you the info name of God or anything until he knows that your heart is cleansed. Like that's the cleansing it's needed. So the next thing I want to talk about is the state of the heart. So I want to go back to that booklet. And now that we talked about the story, I want to go back to that booklet that you give as an Enter the Apprentice. And I want to highlight about a couple of things here. Now you read it with the stories in mind, you can see that when it states that unless Freemason does not tell you that brotherly love, relief, and truth ought to be true, and it will be better for us if they were true, it tells you they are true. There are stories that had showed in older beliefs or showed in every single belief that brotherly love does exist, that loving heart is exist. So now you're gonna say, well, if this person's so brotherly love and they love me and they like they have their heart cleansed and they get the ineffable name of God, why don't they give it to me? That's a question. That's a human question. It's a fair question. Why don't they give it to me? So it's a great question. There was an imam, may he rest in peace. His name is Sha'rawi. He's an imam that was called the Imam of Ummah. Ummah in Arabic means the nation of, like, the whole Muslims in the whole world. Very few imams have been given that title. Keep in mind, an imam is a human. He's not even promised to go to heaven, right? The only few people got promised to go to heaven by Prophet, peace be upon him. They're not even promised to go to heaven. He's a human. There is nobody, the only judger in the Islamic belief is God. Nobody else. Nobody can tell you who's going to heaven or hell. I'm talking the true teachings. That's all it says in the Quran. So Imam Muhammad Mutawalli Sha'rawi, very knowledgeable imam, very respectful imam. There's a sermon when he talked about the ineffable name of God. And he said, well, ineffable name of God, why don't these people give it to me? He said that when they get to that state of purification to get it, they will never leave it to others. They can't, because of two things. One, first, they don't know if your heart is purified. If I know the info name of God, I cannot give it to you because I don't know if your heart is purified. Because you have to the only state for you to receive it is the being a purified heart. Last thing is, they don't know. They are fear. Because keep in mind, their heart is so cleansed, full of love, that they will fear that the receiving person will use it to hurt others. Because keep in mind, this is the most powerful words you will ever receive in your life, that you can get to do things that they are beyond magical, if you want to say it like it's beyond magical. So like a human transforming, moving a piece of like a throne, a big throne with gold and diamonds, and moving it with less than a blink of an eye. And when she came, she saw it. She's like, and Prophet Solomon said, King Solomon said, do you recognize this throne? She was like, yeah, he looks like mine. He was like, yes, it is. He's yours. And then she started believing in God, and actually he ended up marrying her. So that fear of them using to hurt can hurt others. Hence, let's talk about the story as Freemasons we believe. Our brother Harim Abiff did not want to share it because they were not qualifying to receive it, right? So that is the stories behind it. So now, talking about stories, talk about stuff, talk about like history, talk about like the beliefs. Let's get to some symbolism that are within our lodge. That when we sit there, there's so much symbolism that is in front of us that talk about the brotherly love, that heart cleansing, that for us we see it, but sometimes with some esoteric thinking, you were like, oh my God, it means a lot. So the first one I want to talk about it is the plum, the working tools of the plum. So, by the way, I'm talking about Harim Abiff because Harim Abiff symbolism, as Master Masons, we are all raised as Harim Abiff. We were not raised as King Solomon. We did not get raised as King Harim. We got raised as Harim Abiff. So we were raised as Harim Abiff and walking the path of Harim Abiff. So we're going from the south to the west, to as the stationary to the east as we talk. So that's what we're talking. We're going to be talking about that Harim Abiff man, because I'm finishing another presentation about King Harim, which is I think is another supernatural person, and then you have a King Solomon, which is it's a chosen person from God. But let's talk about King Harim Abiff. So the plum in the station of the west of the south talks about in our Virginia ritual, it talks about the plum, admonishes us to walk uprightly in our several stations in life before God and man, squaring our actions by the square of virtue. I have another one that was very close to what I'm looking for from a perspective. So the plum is a tool from Grand Lodge of Ohio. The talk about the plum is a tool of integrity, teaching, and Mason the virtues of being just, honest, upright through actions big and small. So when you're just being honest and being upright, that's like you're being righteous to yourself. You're like your heart is cleansed, like you're being, that's purification. Like when you talk about it, it's a symbolism of purification of the heart, because you cannot be just and honest and upright with a very dirty, cleansed heart, right? Next thing I want to talk about it is the path, 3 steps, right? So if you look at, can you guys see my cursor here by any chance? You can see it?
Yeah, I can kind of see it.
Okay. How about this? Oh. How about this? Can you see this better? Oh, no, the laser's not working. All right. So I'm going to try to see if you can see it. Please let me know. So the 3 stations we talk about is the 3 stations, which is the east, west, and the south west, and east. It starts with the beauty, it goes to strength, and then it finishes in wisdom, which is the east. So from our teachings, we have the beauty, the strength, and the wisdom. I'm not going to talk about the strength and the wisdom because that's not the purpose of this presentation. We're talking about Harim Abiff. We're going to talk about the beauty. When we talk about beauty in the South, we're not talking about Harim Abiff being a good-looking man. I mean, there is no story about it that I know, including the King James Bible, does not talk about Harim Abiff being a good-looking man. I mean, that's not talks about that. But if you take it from a symbolism perspective, the beauty is the beauty of the heart. It's that beauty and cleansing of the heart. It's the beauty of the inside of the soul. It's not a beauty, the outside beauty of the skin. So if you see that symbolism there, does also refer to it from another perspective. Let's talk a bit more about more symbolism, not on Harim Abiff, but within the lodge itself. Every single lodge, more in Virginia that I have been to, I have not, it's things that pay attention to it a lot, has 2 ashlars, a perfect and an imperfect ashlar. Imperfection is we are all human, we are all imperfect, and we are walking towards the perfect ashlar. If you the lecture from your EA talks about it. So I have a question to ask you guys. Which is the easiest to break? I'm sorry, what is the easiest point to break an ashlar?
On the edges.
If you break it in the edges, you chip it. You don't break it. Anybody?
Maybe the corner, like if you drop it on the corner, would that?
If you drop it on the corner, you break the corners.
Thinking dead center on the top.
If I take something, Exactly, Michael, center, the hearts. If you hit the hearts, you hit the center, it breaks easily. Let's reflect that as a human being. As human being, when somebody's heart is broken, it takes him longer than whenever his foot is broken to heal. The heart is the most sensitive part of our body. It's easy to break. It's easy to break if we don't work on protecting it, and it's harder to heal from a long time. Also, it's easy to get polluted. So, Michael, good point. The center, the heart, is the easiest place to break the ashlar correctly. The next one I want to talk about, so what is the easiest way to break an ashlar? Next way is, what is easier to break, the rough or the perfect ashlar? I think I gave away the answer earlier. Of course, the rough ashlar is easier to break. And as Masons, we're taught we are working on ourselves to work from that rough ashlar toward that perfect ashlar. So when you, with all Masonic teachings, with all this cleansing we're doing to our body, with all of the energy, and some people talk about the energy within the lodge, and that so some brothers have done amazing presentation about those, which are like I do believe in that, especially from circumambulation that happens, and so a lot of things like that. You're cleansing your heart. It's very, when you get to that perfect ashlar, it gets harder to break, and it gets stronger. And that's why Masons, with all the teachings, help us go through it. I want to jump into more symbolism, which is the Master Mason working tool. So you're an EA, you pass to a Fellowcraft, and now you're a Master Mason. Then they give you all the tools. And mind you, every single degree has so many tools. Then you go to Master Mason, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to give me 7 tools in this Master Mason. So they give me one tool. It's called a trowel. And the trowel that was given to me, is an instrument. Is an instrument used by operative Mason to spread the cement, which unites a building into one common mass or whole. But it used symbolically for the far more noble, glorious purpose of spreading the cement of brotherly love and affection, which unite us into one sacred bond or society of friends and brothers. As you can see, it doesn't say unite as one fraternity. It talks about society all together in general. It talks about all of us, like spreading the brotherly love, sharing it as brotherly love, and talking about how we provide a temple living stone among us, no contention. So it talks about the whole semen, how it spread the whole brotherly love to meet everybody. So I don't want to, as you can see there, that the story, like the tool is being used to also love. All of the single teachings talks about that spread of love and how powerful is brotherly love as one of our teachings. So how do you achieve this brotherly love? Now that we talked about it, we talked about I have only two slides left. I'm sorry if I took over more time. I have 2 slides left and I'm done. How do you achieve the brotherly love? Easy said than done, of course. Well, of course, I'm working on myself. I want to get to that level of brotherly love. How can I get to it? So we're taught, as mentioned, circumscribe our passions, which is a key thing. Circumscription, what does it mean? I think it means, and I like to make presentations with takeaways, like, hey, how can I work on myself from a brotherly love perspective? How can I learn this? So and these are beyond Masonic. This is just how can you work on yourself as human, knowing your capabilities, right? Know how to be capable, what you can capable of, what you're not capable of. Know your inabilities. So what you're not able of, what you're not able of, because that leads you mainly to a constructive competition. Because a lot of people, they destroy themselves, and I say it like clearly because I've seen it with friends, and I see it with brothers. Compete with other brothers. They destroy themselves whenever they're competing in a wrong way, not a constructive way. That really pollutes your hearts, makes you like in a very destructive ways and so forth. Because when you know your capabilities and your inabilities, you're able to compete and say, I can't do this, I cannot do this. Well, let me go learn how to do this. Oh, he knows how to do it. Let me learn from him and let me try to learn that. Now that I choose actions carefully. there is a very I quote a lot of things from the Bible for a lot of presentations, but there's a in Matthew's 7:12. Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. I mean, you want to make sure that you act and react to people however you react to them. This helps you. It helps you think in that way. It helps you keep that heart cleansed. There is a very famous American saying: "You get more with honey than you get vinegar." Always trying to get that honey going. It helps a lot of smoothing actions and keeping the heart cleansed. And as Moroccans, I cannot walk away from this presentation without talking about the fact that there is a very famous Moroccan saying that translates to, "I prefer a hit with its blood than a word with its poison," which means I prefer somebody hitting me than hurting my heart with a word, because it sticks inside and I get hurt. So with that being said, brothers, thank you very much for joining me for this presentation. Albert Einstein say, any fool can know the points to understand, but any fool can know the points to understand. Please focus on the lessons, not the degrees or the numbers or the chairs, because never forget that the highest level is a sublime degree of Master Mason, but there is also a lot to learn. So I hope that also keep us all learning together and growing together. With that being said, thank you for being among you guys, and thank you for taking the time. And I hope you guys have take away something from my presentation. And I'm open to any questions, comments. The floor is yours, guys.